Day 27 of the Karen Reed case. It was a half a day, and it happened on Wednesday. There was no court on Thursday, and I'm going to recap that for you because there was a couple of very interesting witnesses on the stand right after this intro. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Rebecca, your host of Crafting and Crime Daily. This is a show where I usually craft while I'm watching these trials, and I'm, as a former lawyer, I said, let me just do some recaps here. So, and I like to keep them very short, maybe 30 minutes tops. Sometimes they go a little over. So what happened on day 27? Karen Reed's on trial for the second-degree murder of her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, who was a Boston police officer. The night in question, January 29th, 2022, they had been out drinking with several of their friends, and they all decided to take the party to the Alberts home. She drives John to the Alberts home. What happens after that depends on who you believe. Karen says he got out of the car, went into the house. She proceeds home. He never shows up at home. She goes to look for him, finds him deceased on the front lawn. According to the prosecution, though, he got out of the car, she backed up and hit him, leaving him to die in the snow. Okay. What happened on day 27? Brian Lucky Loughran takes the stand. Now, who's Lucky? He is the lucky snowplow driver that got to snowplow the house in front of the street in front of the Albert house that night. So he talks about he grew up in Canton, Massachusetts, and grew up with the Albert brothers, Kevin, Chris, and Brian. Mostly he was familiar with Chris, but he obviously he knew the other brothers. He said that Chris is part of the select, what do they call it? Select Council. That's their name for like city commissioner, that kind of thing. They call it the select council. So this is a pretty influential family. You know, Chris Albert is on the city council. Brian Albert is a police officer. Kevin Albert is a police officer. And yeah, and a very well-known family. So he was very familiar with this address. At one point, he worked for Chris Albert at his pizza parlor. Chris had a pizza parlor. He worked delivering pizzas, and he was always delivering to the Albert house. You know, I guess when your brother has a pizza parlor, you order a lot of pizza. But he would always deliver to this house. So he's very familiar with this house on Fairview Drive. So the night in question, January 29th, they knew there was a blizzard coming, and he had been told to report for work. He works for the Department of Public Works, has for over 20 years. But in his spare time, he drives a Zamboni at the hockey games. How cool is that? Okay, so that morning, he knew he had to report at 2:30 a.m. So he gets there about 2:15, and he loads up his truck. He gets his snacks and his water and everything he's going to need for his shift. So then he was asked to describe this truck, all the lighting on the truck. The truck has, I don't know what these are, Marquina lights, plow lights, headlights. He says, bottom line is, it's extremely bright when you have all of these lights on and you're snow plowing. So he said his first encounter at the Albert house, or in front of the Albert house, was around 2:40 to 2:45 a.m. So what he does is he will make one pass, then kind of loop around, and then make another pass going in the opposite direction. And the snow always blows to the right. Now, he says his eyes are like, his head is on a swivel. He's always looking everywhere because he wants to make sure there's no people out there, animals, vehicle, things that are going to interfere with his job of snowplowing. He wants to keep everybody safe. So he makes his first pass in front of the Albert house, and there was nothing there. I mean, you've got all these bright lights on, and he said if something had been there, it would have stood out to him, and he didn't see anything. And he said he could see all the way to the front door of their house. So then he comes around and he makes his other pass going the other direction. Same thing, he didn't see anything. Then he comes back about 3:30 a.m. and makes another pass in front of the Albert house. This time, there is a Ford Edge parked near the flagpole. Now, the Alberts own a Ford Edge. And he thought the reason this sticks out in his mind and he remembers it is because he said that Alberts always had plenty of parking in their driveway. There was never any need for any of them to park out on the street, and they didn't. And in fact, you can't park on the street. If there's a snow emergency, you're not allowed to park on the street. And his protocol would have been to call it into a supervisor who would try to contact the Alberts to get them to move the vehicle. If they couldn't, they would tow the vehicle. But because this was the Albert family, he said, well, I'll just go around this time. Now, the Alberts home is kind of set back on the street a little way, so they have a pretty long driveway. So if you're parking up near the flagpole, you've got a pretty good distance to walk before you get to that house, the front of the entry of that house. So he didn't follow protocol that night. And he said, I did it out of respect for the Alberts. I just went around, which is weird because so he's blowing snow all over this car. I don't know. Anyway, his next pass was about 6:15 a.m., but he couldn't get onto Fairview because now there were lights and police lights everywhere, and the road was blocked off. So by now, the police have already responded to Karen Reed, summoning them after she finds the body. So on cross-examination, it was brought out that when he was interviewed by that other agency, the one that they're not naming to the jury, which is the FBI, he gave different times. And but he denies that he gave them those times. Okay, moving on. Then the prosecutor, he kind of got him with this one. He said, so you remember this vehicle? It kind of sticks out because it's in front of the Albert house. So would you remember if there was a dumpster in front of a house? He goes, I don't know. Dumpsters are usually in the back of the house, not in the front of the house. But he didn't remember a dumpster. But then they showed some body cam footage from the crime scene where you can see in the distance or across the street, there's a dumpster in front of a house. Like, oops. Yep. Then he was also asked about this Turtle Boy. There's a blogger called Turtle Boy. That's not his real name, but he's been very pro Karen Reed, very, very to the point where he's now going to be on trial for tampering with witnesses. And so it's alleged that he got a hold of the Snow Plow Driver and influenced him to testify in favor of Karen Reed. And this Snow Plow Driver said, no, that's just not so. But there's pictures of him hugging you. And he's like, I didn't ask for the attention. I didn't want the attention, but I was being polite. There was one more thing. What was it? I'll remember. So the next witness on the stand was Karina Kalaf. I'm going to butcher her last name, so I'm not even going to say it. Karina. She's a pharmacist. She was, her daughter was friends with John O'Keefe's daughter, and they had just gotten into this prestigious private school. And they played sports together, and she had just been at a basketball game, and she comes, she had her long day at work. She'd gone to the basketball game. She was looking forward to coming home and just ending the day that night. But she gets a call from her husband. Hey, I'm over at the waterfall, come have dinner and drink with me. And she's like, he's like, come on. So she goes, and that's when they're there at the waterfall. Karen Reed, she's actually, there for a while. And then Karen Reed and John O'Keefe come in, and she decides, because she was going to go home, but then they come in and she decides, okay, I'm going to stay. She stays and she sits and talks to Karen Reed for like 50 minutes. And she said she didn't appear intoxicated, even though we know that she had quite a few drinks. So, but she said, we were having this conversation and she wasn't acting intoxicated or out of control or anything. And then she talked about how John at one point walked over to her and kissed her on the forehead. She said it was the sweetest thing she had ever seen between a boyfriend and girlfriend. She just thought it was really, really sweet. But then the defense showed this crazy video. I think it was put out there by Turtle Boy, where they're leaving the waterfall, and Brian Higgins, who had a thing for Karen Reed, apparently he saw the kiss on the forehead, and he kind of gestures over towards John O'Keefe, like, come on. And I've seen this video, and honestly, I don't think there was anything nefarious about the gesture. I just think that they're reaching. And this person said, Karina says she didn't really have much to say about that, but she said there was something interesting as we were leaving. Jennifer McCabe goes up to Karen Reed and says, "You're coming with me. You're coming with me." And she thought that was strange. Like, what? She just didn't sit right with her, that whole thing. So make of that what you will. What I take from that is that you've got a couple that are in this very loving relationship. Maybe they were fighting all day, but it's clear that he still loves her. Anyway, that was the testimony on day 27. So I don't know what's in store today. I hope the defense is kind of winding down. I don't know if we're going to have like a rebuttal case by the prosecution. I suspect we will. So this case is going to keep on going. So let me know what you think of this Snow Plow Driver down in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.